The way the operations work, I'm going to walk you through sort of step by step. The first thing that we do is we generate a flight plan. So what's different about our UAV system than others you might have seen out there is that Adam or one of us isn't flying this thing with a joystick. We generate a flight plan using the flight planning software. That flight plan is then uploaded to the UAV, and then the UAV follows that flight plan. So there is no manual control of this UAV. Although that is a possibility, the manufacturer specifically tells you don't do it because everyone who does it crashes it. So this really is an automated system that's flying a pre-programmed flight path, and that flight path really has to be pre-programmed because we want to get enough overlap between the images in order to get the 3D measurements that we need. So this is an example here on the slide of what a flight plan looks like. This is for the Morrisville alternate truck route that we were up flying a couple weeks ago. Once we get out to the field, the UAV is just there in a briefcase. We just take it out and we can really have that assembled in less than 2 minutes. It's very quick, it's very small, and very unimpressive for the $22,000 that we spent on it. But really the driver behind that cost is the excellent software that allows us to do some of the things we're going to show you in a little bit. So we take it out of the case, we get it assembled, we do a GPS link with the computer which has an antenna attached to it, we make sure that the flight plan is uploaded, and then here we have an action shot. Jonathan, we wanted to make sure you're included in here. You just shake the thing 3 times and then we throw it up in the air. And I'm hoping we have enough bandwidth here to do an action video here. This is actually me launching the UAV. We'll see how this displays over GoToMeeting, but it's deceptively easy. You really just toss it up in the air, and then it takes off and it flies away. And once again, it's executing that pre-programmed flight path that we've put into it. And this is where it absolutely looks like a drunken raven. It's a little black thing up there bobbing in the sky, and you're sort of in disbelief after you land and process the data that this little thing could have generated these great products. So I'd like to show you some of those products. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. While that aircraft is in the air, if it's a long route like the Morrisville truck route, we deploy spotters out there with handheld radios to make sure we can maintain line of sight. We have someone, usually Adam, who's monitoring the download link on the computer there, so the UAV is constantly sending back its location, so we can monitor where it is. If it loses connection with the radio link, it automatically comes home. And then Adam can also do things like prior to landing, put it into a holding pattern if the landing zone is not clear and so forth. So he's monitoring on the computer, and then someone else always has eyes on, either a single person if it's a small site, or multiple people like when we flew the Morrisville alternate truck route. The product we get immediately upon the UAV landing and us plugging it into the computer. So it's not feeding back data images while it's flying. You have to wait till you retrieve it, you connect it to your computer, and you get an overlay for using Google Earth. For Jonathan and the mapping folks there, this is a Kml Overlay. It's very simple. What this does, you open it up in Google Earth. It contains the tracks, that is the flight lines that the UAV actually flew. So those are those lines in red there. And then each place it took a picture, it has one of those little push pins there. And you can click on those and you can see the digital image. So this is the product we generate immediately after the UAV lands. So really it's just downloading it and then we're ready to go with this product. That is not the final product, it's just an intermediate one that gives you instantaneous access to the data. None of these photos have been what we call geo-referenced yet or ortho-rectified, meaning that they're mapping grade where we can overlay them on top of other data. They're just pictures at this point in time. Then there's a process, and it typically takes somewhere along the lines of 3 to 8 hours. We generate 2 different things. We generate what we call an Ortho Mosaic, that is an ortho-rectified or mapping quality image. So this is something we can bring into GIS or Geographic Information System software to overlay. That's the first product. The second product is a 3D point cloud. So I'm going to focus on the first product, which is the mapping quality imagery. And what you see here is the mosaic we've created from flying the Morrisville truck route. So What we do is we feed all the images into the software. It stitches them together. It uses the GPS positional location, and if we desire locational information, we feed it to create this mapping quality mosaic image. And Jonathan has a copy of this for use. We'll zoom into some areas here that we flew for the Morrisville truck route, just to give you an idea of the quality of the imagery. Depending on how high we fly and how close we get the overlap, that all impacts the quality of the imagery. What we're looking now is at some of the 3.6 centimeter imagery we acquired over this area. So you can see here, I mean, fantastic detail. You can see an awful lot from the retention pond to the vehicles that are there, to the stop sign that's lying down, to the mounds, to some of the flagging here that's employed along the side of the site. I mean, really remarkable imagery. And we'll zoom in here, and at 3.6 centimeters, you can almost make out the letters on the stop sign. So once again, very, very detailed and also highly accurate imagery. When we overlay this on other data within GIS, it looks really, really good. And the big advantage that we see sort of outside of this project, in these cases where you're doing work like the Morrisville truck route, is if you were to go to Google Earth or Google Maps or download the imagery from VCGI, the Vermont Center for Geographic Information, for that truck route area, this is what you would see. Okay, this is the imagery. It's old, it's dated, and what we can do with our UAV is go out and fly in a couple hours and get updated imagery of that site, because this is what it looks like now. And you see a lot of things have changed. I'll flip back and forth here. Not only do we have a bridge there because the area is under construction, but you can even see that the river has changed in the way that not only water levels, placement of debris, and things like that. So the UAV, we think, is a really excellent tool in those cases where you have a small and limited area that you need to fly on a regular basis to get updated information in a very cost-effective manner. So once again, once we get out there, flight time is really a couple hours, and then processing overnight to do something like this. And depending on how complex the area is, it's either a team of anywhere sort of from 3 to 5 people, depending on how many spotters we need to maintain line of sight. So that's the 2D imagery, but what's nice is because we're gathering that imagery from multiple angles, we can generate 3D information as well. So this is just one of the mounds along the Morrisville truck route, one of the dirt mounds there. You can actually see the vehicle tracks going up on top of it. And we focused on this mound, and we also went out with a ground-based LiDAR system to begin to calibrate our volume estimates to see how well we can estimate volume from both the UAV compared to sort of the ground truth information. We've also been out, Sean's been very helpful in helping us obtain permission to go out to Shelburne Farms and fly their manure pits there, and also getting ground-based LiDAR scans of their manure pits so we can do volume estimation of that. So we wanted to find some known locations where we could get very detailed measurements of the data to compare it to our UAV. And so this is what Adam's working on right now. He's taking this data, he's feeding it into our 3D modeling software, and then he's going ahead, and so right now he's been computing volume estimations just based on the UAV data, and then today he's picking up the ground-based LiDAR data that was acquired in collaboration with our engineering department, and we'll be able to do some comparisons. And those comparisons will let us know under varying UAV flight conditions. So for each of these areas, we change the flight path, change the resolution. We'll be able to see how well we do in terms of estimating volume. So right now, Adam's been looking at 2 software packages for estimating volume, and you can see they're quite close here. I mean, almost within 10 cubic meters. So this is what we really want to see. We want to see how accurate we can get in terms of the volume estimation. So I'll do a quick pause there. Like I said, we're trying to move quickly to be respectful of your time, but prior to going into the second phase, the satellite damage detection, I just wanted to see if there are any questions on the Operation Drunken Raven, as we call it. Nope. Everyone feeling good? Are people still out there?
We're still out here. No,
excellent.
That's amazing.
Excellent. Great. Yeah, and it was great. We got to have Jonathan out with us on the second day of mapping, and it was a lot of fun. And once again, we can't thank the VTrans people enough. You know, everyone from in the sort of the headquarters officers who have helped us arrange permission for these flights, and the people in the field who have been absolutely fantastic. Although some of the gentlemen out there did say they were tempted to get their shotguns and shoot it down, no one actually did, and we're grateful for their restraint. So moving on to our next phase, which is the satellite damage detection, and once again we're doing these things in parallel, thinking that when an event happens, you need both of these things. You might want to take the UAV out to select sites and get the detailed imagery and the volume estimation, but you might also want to find where those sites are, and of course there's the fog that sort of envelops all of us when you have one of these events, and there's communication problems and it's unclear what roads are out. And with satellites we can gather a tremendous amount of information about the Earth's surface very, very quickly. And during a disaster event, things kick in such as the International Charter, which the USGS is a part of, which sort of mobilizes all the commercial and civil satellites out there. And then we also have the big three-letter agencies like the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which puts a lot of money into commercial satellite imagery. And during disasters, that imagery is then available to federal, state, local agencies and their partners who are participating in disaster response. So we wanted to look at ways in which we could automate the detection of damage from imagery and get that information out more rapidly. Because what we found during Irene is that we had all this satellite imagery, and that shipping it around on hard drives to everyone, especially when the roads are out, is not a feasible solution. We just want to let you know where the damage is and give you a little screen capture of that. And Sean's been doing a lot of great work on this. So just to sort of let you know what our test cases are, we've been working with our commercial partner in this case, Digital Globe, and then with a software donation from eCognition to obtain before and after imagery for recent events. And we focused on two right now. We've got the recent flooding in Colorado and Hurricane Sandy. So keeping in mind that one of the goals from this project is to make sure that it's applicable throughout the nation. So these are the two events. And so what you can see here is we've got before and after imagery. This is an example from Colorado here, and you can clearly see that there's been some flood damage here, major flood damage. That's one event. Here's another example from Colorado, sort of something similar to Irene here, I think, where we saw in Vermont, where you have a portion of the road that's been compromised. Here we are looking at some examples from Hurricane Sandy, so a bit of a different situation here. This is not something we're likely to see in Vermont, but we think it's a scenario we needed to account for in our damage detection algorithms, where you're getting essentially the movement of the ocean into shore, and it's doing a lot of damage, and then it recedes, so a bit of a different type of damage situation there. And here we see another example from Hurricane Sandy along the coastline. So once again, these are the two sort of examples we're focusing on right now because we've got a lot of good data to support it. Here's another instance of damage from inundation. So a lot of data preparation does have to go into this, but we're trying to get that as fast as possible. You need to bring the imagery in again, stitch it together, and then we obtain existing road center line data so that we can identify where the roads are and then use the damage detection from the before and after imagery to find out what roads are compromised. What we're trying to minimize is the amount of orthorectification. That's the processing to remove displacement associated with the sensor and the terrain. So we're trying to minimize that as much as possible, but it may be needed in some cases, but it slows down the process. So we use techniques known as object-based image analysis. So we're trying to replicate what a human analyst does, but through an automated routine. So we model the roads from the road center lines. We identify breaks in those roads from the imagery caused to water to debris, and then we can export that both as sort of GIS data you can bring into your system and then just as JPEG snapshots, which then can be emailed out to people. So this just shows you sort of some examples here. Here we've identified a road corridor, and what Sean's done with the automated feature extraction algorithms is identify where water has occurred within that road corridor, and then estimate the road center lines, and then figure out where the actual damage has occurred. So this is sort of an iterative process. You find those candidate areas and then narrow in on it. And then the final result, like I said, is to get this stuff out to people in a very quick and easy to email or transmit format where we've simply got a JPEG rather than a multi-gigabyte GIS image file, and then with the coordinates associated with it. So here's some example of just the damage detection from Sandy exported to a JPEG file. And so that's the satellite damage detection. And so the final thing that, of course, is in the back of our heads the whole time is data distribution, sharing products, and how is that going to work, and especially with respect to the UAV data. Although something like the Morrisville truck route is a very small area, when you have 3-centimeter imagery, suddenly that's a multi-gigabyte file. And so we actually have a new partner online for this. This is iCubed. It's a company in Colorado, and they've actually decided to donate some space for us and some capabilities. And they sort of have a unique solution called Data Doors, and it's sort of an online data mart, and organizations can buy into this. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to upload data, and then anyone in your organization can sort of do the clip and zip. So select an area that you're interested in, it will extract the information, and it will even do some processing on it. So for example, if we upload our 3D data that we have from our UAV operations, if you're interested in contours, or you want what we call the raw data out of that, which is the point cloud, or you want a raster surface model, apologize for the sort of GIS technical terms, but if you're that type of end user that knows your products, you can simply select those, find them, choose the product that you want, clip out only the area that you're interested in, and then download that to your data, to your computer to work with. So we think keeping in sort of with the mindset of this grant, which is based on commercial technologies, we're excited to have this partner online to sort of illustrate how you can distribute these sort of data sets nowadays. And that sort of wraps it up from our end in terms of the formal presentation phase. We hope this really gave you folks a good idea of what we've been up to. It's a great team, and it's been a lot of fun. And any suggestions, feedback, comments you folks have are really appreciated, either now or via email.
Charlotte, I'm wondering about in the damage detection using the satellite imagery, the impact of vegetation. The examples you showed really didn't have any canopy issues associated with them, but I'm thinking about secondary roads in Vermont and the efforts that we undertook at the local level with RPC staff and local folks to try and understand the damage. And in a situation where you can't really access the bulk of the damage necessarily if there's vegetation and using imagery, are you thinking about different applications for different conditions?
Well, what we're thinking about with the satellite imagery is and it's a great question, and absolutely it's not going to find all of your damage. What we're hoping with the satellite imagery is to alleviate that bottleneck where sort of Irene, it's just like, oh, we've got all this imagery and people have to scan through it and things like that. When you move to automated techniques, it's never as good as a person, and a satellite, like you said, is restricted. It's got one point of view, which is from the top down. So our hope is that we can really just eliminate the need for people to comb through all that data. We're certainly not going to find all the damage, and what we saw during Irene is that depending on the satellite's orbits, they're not always imaging the areas that are damaged, but hopefully we can at least eliminate that need to comb through all this data to ship hard drives and say, hey, these are areas where we think there's damage. And so perhaps we'll look at some sort of probability ranking and say, hey, if you do go out, these are areas that you should look at. But we're certainly not going to find all the damage, and it's not that perfect solution, and I don't think we're ever going to replace boots on the ground. And then for those other areas where we think something's up, but we're not sure and we can't access it. So a good example is there's no satellite imagery. Chunk of the road here is out, maybe there's a chunk of the road up there, and we don't know what's happening in the middle. Then the UAV is a great solution for that. You've got a small area, you want high-resolution imagery, you can deploy a team to an end of that, you can fly a few kilometers and then come back out. So yeah, we don't want to say that with a push of a button we will identify all your damage following an event. Really, it's an attempt to, like I said, comb through these vast archives of imagery and reduce the amount of time that the GIS specialists have to spend combing through imagery so that we can take that out of the equation.
I guess a follow-up question in a similar vein is how responsive is the UAV to vegetation and other things that might be in the flight path? Because I'm thinking if you put a flight path in for rural road and you don't know sort of what the conditions are going to be necessarily if you can't get to those locations, does it adapt to the environment around it?
Okay, so that's a good question. So for those of you on the phone, I just wanted to repeat Michelle's question. She's down at the other end of the table. She said, how does the UAV respond to sort of vegetation in the changing landscape? So one of the things that we have in the flight planning software is we can look at the ground elevation. So we can know the ground elevation and we can adjust off of that. And then we're flying around 400 feet above the ground. So what we're hoping is that there are no trees that are around over 300 feet. It does have a sensor on it, so when it comes into land, it's got a small near-infrared sensor. It can detect the ground, so if we actually had a situation because we were out at the Morrisville truck route where there was a pickup truck, we didn't have imagery of the landing zone prior to flying, so we estimated based on GPS, and there was a pickup truck close to the landing zone, and you could see that it sensed it and picked up a little bit before it landed. That sensor will not work on vegetation, so it's something we have to be careful of. We do not want to be flying, 50 feet off the ground, trying to do sort of terrain hugging operations. We really want to make sure that we're up above that vegetation and be especially careful if we're operating in an area, like you said, where we've got a lot of changes in the terrain, because the manufacturers told us that I think most of their losses are people sort of running into trees and things like that. And our biggest worry, I think, is sort of launch and takeoff. Actually, is do we have enough clearance to get it up? Because once it's up at 400 feet, we feel pretty safe. But it's getting up there that can be tricky, especially rural roads, small areas, and things like that. So I think our biggest concern is probably launch and takeoff in those types of environments.
Yeah, I would just add, Charles didn't get into it in the presentation, but we spent an enormous amount of time, probably as much time, planning how to safely and effectively do these flights in the field as we have anything else, and that's been really tricky. We're sort of thinking of, some standard guidelines that we're going to go through each time, checklists, and because there are challenges with the particular thing we're doing, which is flying a more linear pattern, is not something that there's a lot of experience with worldwide. Most of the applications are agricultural, which means it's a big open area, easy takeoff, easy landing, and you just make a big square and it automatically does a flight path. Our applications are much more tricky. We have takeoff areas that are not exactly where the flight is going to take place, so the thing has to take off, go, get the images, and then come back. We have to be really, and so we've had to do these relays with radios and stuff that is really exciting, because I don't think too many people are going through the challenges that we are, but that's been on our minds primarily, because we don't want this thing to hit anything. It's pretty fragile.
And that's not because we're worried about the things it could hit. We're worried about it itself.
No, yeah,
it's a tiny little styrofoam thing.
Pretty quickly that this thing hitting and hurting someone or something is not as realistic as it getting damaged or lost, which we're cognizant of.
Yeah, so just to recap for you folks on the phone, in case you couldn't hear, questions about the takeoff and landing and things like that. And like Jim said, I didn't cover it a lot in our presentation, but we, in particular, Adam, have put a lot of work into both testing these things out, and Adam's on the final stages of writing up our sort of standard operating guidelines that'll do us, and then when we get back from the holidays, we should have our checklist finalized, so during flight and then post-flight checklists that will govern the operation. We really hope that that'll sort of assist not only us in conducting safe and effective operations, but also other states that may be interested in this, or other organizations, once the FAA begins to lift some of the restrictions.
That was a question I had, Jarlath. Is the whole pre-planning with FAA and getting your sign-offs, and what kind of lead time does that look like? Yeah, so right now we've been working with the folks at VTrans, and they've been really helpful, and so they've asked us to give them about a week's notice. The big thing that we hope that's coming in sort of 2014, 2015 are some actual guidelines from the FAA on how UAVs and what most people call drones are how they're gonna operate, because it's
right now it's great that organizations such as us can use it, but it's really hampering both other organizations, government organizations, and the private sector in terms of their use of these, because you can go out and buy a $300 quadcopter on Amazon and pretty much do what you want with it because you're recreation. But as soon as you want to use it for commercial purposes, all the rules change, which really doesn't make a lot of sense. And if you go on YouTube, you can actually find someone flew a quadcopter over the Morrisville truck route, and it's a guy who owns a real estate company, and I guess he could just argue that no one paid him to do that and it was just for recreation. But there's nothing governing him, but of course when we go out and fly, we're coordinating with everyone. So it's really this insane double standard right now that doesn't make a tremendous amount of sense.
Was that Jonathan? Was that Jonathan asking the question?
Yeah.
Yes, it is, yeah.
So Jonathan, if you remember at the GIST conference last spring, the gentleman from the Ohio DOT gave his presentation on the UAV that they're using. And there are quite a few things that I remember seeing that they were doing that I think it was taking them 6 months from sort of initiation to flight to plan and carry out a flight. And I think, we're in a situation where somehow through our ability to interact with the VTrans folks and make sure we stay within FAA's guidelines, we're able to just do things much faster. And so I think that's something to be proud of on both UVM and VTrans's part. And it's something we'll be able to talk about at GIST next year, which is here in Burlington. So we're really excited about that. Jarlath has a couple of presentations planned for that conference on this work, and I know that both you and Steph have been presences there, and so that'll be pretty exciting.
Yeah, what Fred Judson from ODOT was bringing up is there was a lot of lead time that they had a lot of paperwork to do in advance, and it just seems very contrary when we're looking at this whole rapid deployment of the UAV to collect the imagery. If you've got to go through 6 months or even 60 days of FAA paperwork, it really negates the value. So I hope that things do improve, and having a 2-week window, I think that's great. It'd be nice if it was a lot less, that you could just go and do it, but that will be coming.
Yeah, I think so.
So I have a question that's kind of on a new research tangent, but related, I think. And that would be whether or not you've had discussions with ANR River Management Program about the use of the volume assessment for looking at change in river morphology over periods of time, in particular in areas they've already identified as destabilized areas.
Sure. So the question on the for the folks on the phone was, have we considered talking with ANR about using the UAV for other purposes, especially volume estimation along areas where we see sort of geomorphic changes of river and stream systems. Looks like we are going to get funding for one project with sort of a VTrans ANR collaboration, which is looking at debris, but we're going to be flying some streams, and the folks in engineering, of course, Donna Rizzo and things, they've been going out, they've been using their ground-based LiDAR system to image some of these streams. So we're thinking when that project kicks off, when we're sort of flying streams, gosh, it'd be great to go out with the UAV and gather information about these streams. And I think, once again, it's that you've got a small area, you cannot afford the satellite imagery or the aerial imagery is either not cost effective or not timely enough, and you can say, hey, let's go out and fly this in the fall, let's come back in the spring, and let's do a flight again in the summer, and maybe you've spent a couple $1,000s to do that. So I think it's going to be a very cost-effective application for that. So although I don't think we have sort of direct funding for that, it's sort of something that I think tangentially we might find ourselves involved in. And we hope to begin to, as we get further along with this, sort of offer the UAV up as a service for agencies where it meets this unique mapping need. And I think it's sort of like GIS was in the early days, where UVM was able to get on that technology quickly and help people get up, and once all the regulations get worked out, then maybe you folks will have your own UAV, and Jonathan Croft will have his little mini Air Force there and things like that. So that's our hope and where we see our role in all of this.
I see a drunken raven squadron here.
Yeah, that's right. We are planning on getting T-shirts, so if you're interested, just send me your T-shirt size, advisory committee. Any other questions, folks on the phone? Going once, going twice. We know it's December. All of you have your holiday shopping to do. Well, great. Like I said, we can't thank you folks enough. We're very excited to be where we are right now. It's been a lot of fun, and it's been a great team here. A lot of fun just at UVM working with TRC and Sal together, and especially to have involve undergraduate students like Adam has been absolutely fantastic. And like I said, if you are interested in a Drunken Raven T-shirt, just let me know your T-shirt size, and we'll be ordering those sometimes over the holidays, and hopefully get you yours after the new year. And then we look forward to reconnecting with you folks at our next meeting.
So Jarlath, do you expect any more flights in the near term?
Yeah, we're looking at, we actually think we'd be interested, and especially if you would, Jonathan, flying, I think, the Morrisville truck route again, and getting out there. And then we really want to get out and practice sort of our landing and procedures a lot more, and really figuring out, if we've got a very narrow area, how easy is it for us to be able to land on that. So we do see us doing some more flights over the winter. We want to see how it looks in snow conditions. Sean and Adam got out last week, and they flew under some windier conditions where the UAV was generating a warning because the winds got high enough to disrupt its flight. So doing those kinds of things, pushing the envelope a bit. So yeah, we'll be doing those. And if you folks have areas that you're interested in us getting imagery of, we need to get as much flight time as we can, so please let us know, and we'd be happy to go out and fly those. But I think getting the Morrisville truck route a few more times as construction unfolds would be a lot of fun.
Excellent. Yeah, Brennan Gauthier is with us right now, and he's our archaeologist, and he's had a lot of benefit from LiDAR, and he expressed some interest in seeing some of this imagery.
Yeah, I was hoping the Route 78 corridor up in Swanton. We have a number of Native American features, including cemeteries and some kind of mountain features. It'd be kind of great to see some imagery from there.
Yeah, okay, great. So,
and a correlation with the Rock River and LiDAR data.
Yeah. One of the tricky things in this case with UAV is we're not getting canopy penetration or things like that. So you're not going to get what LiDAR does, sort of get under things. So it is better if it's exposed. But if you have exposed areas, then we can really get a lot of detail, actually more detail than LiDAR.
Yeah, the area I'm thinking, it's exposed. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you want to send us some coordinates with that, I'm sure we can tie it in for something relative to this project.
Thanks.
Great. Well, once again, thanks everyone, and wishing all of you enjoyable and safe holidays.
Thank you. Thank you, Jarlath, and thank you to your team. This is some amazing stuff.
Great. Well, thanks.
Have a great holiday. Bye.
Thank you.
John, I forgot to ask.
Oh yeah.
The time required after the UAV data collection to post-process the data and really make it accessible.
Yeah, it really takes a sort of. I guess we're usually seeing like 5 to 8 hours, I would say.
Yeah, it really depends on the size of the area.
Yeah.
The Miller pit we showed earlier, we flew that on Tuesday, and it took about 2 hours to process.
But like the truck route?
The truck route was maybe closer to 8.
Yeah, it's really something like you fly, come back, run it overnight, and then the next morning I was sending stuff to Jonathan Croft.
Well, that's not so bad.
Yeah, so definitely you can get that information out in 24 hours.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about disaster.
Yeah, but you can have that Kml file, the Google Earth overlay, which has all the pictures straight away. Yeah. We'd like to have processing faster, but a number of years ago I worked on a different Air Force related UAV project, and it was taking us a week do this type of stuff. So it's getting a lot better. So if you need I think what's really nice is if you need just those happy snaps of the air, you just want to click through and see the images, we can have that right after we land the system. If you want the mapping grade data, then it's waiting until the next morning.
Nice.
We were hoping to experiment with uplinks, right, to get that set up.
Yeah, we had talked with the emergency management folks about some of their sort of deployable wireless network stuff and looking at things like that. So
to get the images, to get the raw images up.
Yeah, get the raw images up quickly, and I think the KML file is a good way to do that. Because you don't even need special GIS software; you just need Google Earth there, and you're up and running. And then we'll look at ways to make the other data more accessible as well. But I've sent it along to Jonathan Croft at VTrans, and he's been working with it.
Sure. Well, yeah, I think Mike Klein and folks over at River Management would be very excited about the possibilities here.
Yeah.
I was reminded too that Mike Snyder wanted to come out.
Okay.
I mentioned it to him, and he was interested.
Oh, great.
That would be some good exposure to get Mike excited, and maybe people in forest parks and recreation.
Yeah. Yeah, because we think a lot of these things, like I said, you've got a small area, you want to image it over time.
Thinking about canopy analysis for climate change or insect infestation issues and that sort of thing.
I mean, phenology, because right now the only way you get a canopy data over time is from very coarse resolution satellites. So the ones that are really only doing it. So this thing, you can imagine, you can pick a research plot and just start flying every 2 weeks from the spring through the fall.
Absolutely.
And it's really great. And once we found the system really easy to use and operate.
That's great. Cool.
We'll be going over some of the UAV basics next week in a presentation to the Vermont Monitoring Cooperative, and lots of A&R folks will be there. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Sean's sort of doing sort of the latest and greatest on remote sensing, LiDAR, and UAVs, and I think it's nice because it's kind of bringing the technology sort of really into the hands of the end users.
Yeah.
And making us data acquisition people, which we've never been before, so it's a real change.
Yeah.
It was Stacy Pomeroy and Scott Rogers are the ones who really brought the project idea of looking for debris in streams to us. And so
that's a great one.
Yeah, but we hadn't thought about sort of because that's an obvious build on that, even in terms of debris is when debris gets transported, the river changes.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there's a natural follow-on that, you're going to have new river characteristics.
Yeah, and we've spent just hundreds of thousands of dollars doing these stream geomorphic assessments throughout the state, and it's just a point in time. And we really, we can get characteristics about where we know things are going to be destabilized for some length of time, but in terms of how much worse is it? And you can't go out and do that research again very often. So this would be a really cost-effective way to continually monitor and make adjustments and then see what happens.
I couldn't agree more. And I think on our end, we're just making careful that we don't oversell the technology. This isn't going to replace the Vermont orthophotography program, right? And we tell people, you're not even for your town, you're not going to fly imagery of your town probably using a UAV, but you've got a couple kilometers of stream that you want to monitor. I mean, gosh, what a perfect use for it. And you can what is actually nice, I mean, if we were able to get more funds, is you can actually buy more of these and you can have them integrated flight operations where you launch them and you can have an integrated flight plan so that where one ends, the other begins.
Okay.
So if you want to have your, we're sort of joking about the miniature Air Force, but really you could have that and cover much larger area. Of course, then you have to deploy more teams and things like that, but it's still feasible.